For men stood accused of causing a hunchback's death. The tailor, the Jew, the reeve, and the Christian broker were brought before the Sultan of China, with the hunchback's body borne on men's shoulders. When the Sultan heard the complete tale from beginning to end, he marveled greatly and was moved to mirth.
This is indeed a wonder of wonders. Let this story be written in letters of gold.
Then he turned to those assembled.
Did you ever hear a tale more marvelous than that of my hunchback?
But before anyone could answer, an old man pushed forward from among the crowd of onlookers. He was a barber, an ancient fellow past his 90th year, with a long white beard and a sharp, clever face. A common man who had spent his life cutting hair and listening to the stories of others.
O King of the age, if you seek a tale more marvelous than that of your hunchback, I can tell you of my 6 brothers. Each of them met with strange fortune in this world. Their tales are filled with folly and wisdom, with laughter and tears, and they shall show you that wonder abounds in the lives of common folk as well as in the courts of kings.
The Sultan gestured for him to continue. Standing before them all, the barber smoothed his long white beard and began his narrative. The barber began with a tale of himself.
I lived in Baghdad in the time of Caliph al-Mustansir. One year he was furious with 10 highway robbers and ordered them brought in for punishment during the festival. The prefect arrested them and put them in a boat to cross the river. I saw them boarding and foolishly decided they must be going to a feast. I stepped into the boat and started talking to them. When we landed, the guards chained the robbers and they chained me too, since I was standing right there among them. The next morning we were taken before the caliph. He ordered the 10 men executed. The headsman did his work. Afterward the caliph looked at me and said,
Why didn't you speak? How did you come to be with these criminals?
I told him I had only been trying to be polite. I also reminded him that I was known as the Silent Man. The caliph laughed, because I wouldn't stop talking. Then I said, O Commander of the Faithful, I am not like my 6 brothers. They talk even more than I do, and each one of them ended up suffering terrible misfortune. If you wish, I will tell you how it happened. And so I began my tales.
First brother, Al-Bakbuk the hunchback.
Know then, O Commander of the Faithful, that my first brother, Al-Bakbuk the Prattler, as folk called him, was a hunchback who took to tailoring in Baghdad. Now, I tell you plainly, the man was as great a fool as ever threaded a needle.
The barber tapped his own forehead with one finger and shook his head in mock despair.
He rented a shop in a building where a wealthy man dwelt in the upper stories, and the landlord kept a flour mill in the basement below. One day as my brother sat at his work, stitching and hemming, he happened to raise his head and saw at the window above him a lady like the rising full moon, gazing down at the street below. When my brother beheld her beauty, his heart was captured entirely. Or rather, what passes for a heart in such a simpleton? He could do nothing but stare upward, his needle forgotten in his hand, his mouth hanging open like a fish gasping for air.
Here the barber tilted his head back, let his jaw drop open, and gazed upward with vacant eyes, perfectly mimicking his brother's besotted expression. Several courtiers chuckled.
He passed his whole day thus, gazing at her window and neglecting his tailoring until eventide. The next morning he opened his shop and sat down to sew, but as often as he stitched a stitch, he looked to that window and saw her there as before. The fool had already convinced himself that she must surely return his affection. His passion and infatuation grew with each passing hour, feeding on nothing but his own delusions. On the 3rd day, as he sat in his usual place gazing longingly upward, she caught sight of him. Perceiving that he had been captivated with love of her, she laughed, mocking him openly, as any woman of sense would laugh at such a ridiculous figure. But my fool of a brother interpreted this laughter as tender affection. He smiled back at her, his heart leaping with joy, convinced that her ridicule was actually the sweet response of a woman in love. Then she disappeared from view. Presently her handmaid came to the shop, bearing a bundle containing a piece of red silk. The girl addressed my brother courteously.
My lady greets you and desires that you fashion for her a fine shift from this silk. She asks that you sew it handsomely with your best work.
My brother replied eagerly.
I hear and I obey.
He shaped the garment that very day and finished sewing it with the most careful stitches he had ever made, working late into the night by lamplight. When morning came, the handmaid returned.
My lady greets you and asks how you passed the night, for she herself has not tasted sleep, her heart being so taken up with thoughts of you.
Then she laid before him a piece of yellow satin and continued.
My lady bids you cut for her 2 pairs of trousers from this cloth, and sew them this very day.
My foolish brother's heart soared. He cried.
I hear and I obey. Greet her for me with many greetings, and say to her, your slave is obedient to your every command.
He applied himself to cutting and sewing with fierce concentration. After an hour, the lady herself appeared at the window above and saluted him with gestures, now casting down her eyes modestly, then smiling warmly in his face. My brother began to assure himself that he would soon make his conquest. She did not leave the window until he had finished the 2 pairs of trousers, working without pause. Only then did she withdraw, sending her handmaid to collect the garments. That night, my brother threw himself on his sleeping mat and tossed from side to side till morning, burning with desire and anticipation. When dawn came, he hurried to open his shop and sat waiting. Presently the handmaid appeared. But this time her words were different.
My master calls for you.
Hearing this, my brother felt a wave of fear. But the slave girl, seeing his fright, said quickly,
No evil is meant for you. Only good awaits you. My lady would have you make acquaintance with my lord, her husband.
So my brother, his fear turning to joy and hope, went with her. When he entered the presence of the landlord, he kissed the ground before him in respect. The master of the house returned his greeting graciously and handed him a great length of fine linen.
Cut me 20 shirts from this cloth, and sew them well.
My brother answered.
To hear is to obey.
He fell to work at once, snipping and shaping and sewing without pause until he had finished all 20 shirts by supper time. He had not stopped even to eat. The master examined the work with approval.
What is your wage for this labor?
My brother replied.
20 dirhams.
The gentleman turned to his slave girl.
Bring me 20 dirhams.
But from behind her husband, the lady caught my brother's eye and made a swift gesture. Take nothing. Now any man with half a wit would have seen through this scheme immediately. But my brother, that monument to stupidity, convinced himself she must have some tender reason. Surely, he thought, she plans to reward me herself later in a more intimate fashion. So he spoke quickly.
By Allah, I will take nothing from your hand.
The barber thrust both palms forward in an exaggerated gesture of refusal, then slapped his forehead in disbelief at his brother's folly.
And he gathered up his tailoring tools and returned to his shop, though he had not a copper coin to his name, congratulating himself on his cleverness while the couple upstairs laughed themselves sick at his expense. After this, he applied himself to their work with even greater diligence, eating but a scrap of bread and drinking only a little water, working 3 days straight on more garments. He grew thin and weak, but his hopes sustained him. At the end of 3 days, the handmaid came again.
What have you finished?
He said,
Everything is complete.
and carried the new clothes to the lady's husband. Again the master would have paid him, but again my brother refused, heeding the lady's secret signals. For she had informed her husband of my brother's infatuation. They had agreed between themselves to make him their unpaid tailor, the better to mock and laugh at him. This pattern continued. Next the master ordered 5 long-sleeved robes. My brother cut and sewed them all, carried them to the house, and when offered a purse of silver, extended his hand only to see the lady signal urgently from behind her husband. He put his hand down.
Oh my lord, there is no hurry. We have time enough for payment later.
He left the house that day meaner and more miserable than a donkey, and with about as much sense as one. For truly, 5 things were gathered in him: desperate love, utter poverty, gnawing hunger, complete nakedness, and hard unpaid labor. Yet still he clung to the hope of gaining the lady's favor. By Allah, Commander of the Faithful, I have seen donkeys with more wisdom than my brother showed.
The barber counted off each item on his fingers, then spread his hands wide in a gesture of utter bewilderment. The caliph's eyes gleamed with mirth.
When at last he had completed every piece of sewing they required, and the couple saw they could squeeze no more free labor from him, they played their final, cruelest trick. They arranged for him to marry their slave girl. My brother could scarcely believe his fortune. The fool practically danced with joy. At last, he thought, the lady has arranged for me to enter the household. Soon I shall be close to her. Never did it occur to his addled brain that respectable folk do not marry their tailors to their slave girls. The wedding contract was drawn up and signed, and my brother put his mark upon it with a hand trembling with eagerness.
The old barber actually shuffled his feet in a brief, mocking dance, his long beard swaying, before he clasped his hands together in an exaggerated show of trembling excitement. Laughter rippled through the court.
On the wedding night, they told him,
You must spend this night in the mill below. It is our custom. Tomorrow morning all will be set right, and you shall go to your bride.
Now, O Commander of the Faithful, picture this: a grown man, hearing that he must spend his wedding night yoked like an ox in a flour mill, and he thinks to himself, this must be some refined custom of the upper classes. So he descended alone to the flour mill in the basement, actually looking forward to participating in what he imagined was an ancient aristocratic tradition. The husband had secretly instructed the miller to make my brother turn the millstone in place of the ox. When the night was half spent, the miller came down to the mill, found my brother waiting there, still in his wedding clothes, and said,
This ox of ours has become lazy and useless. He will not turn the mill tonight, and yet we have great quantities of grain to grind before morning. The people are waiting impatiently for their flour.
Then he approached my brother with a rope in his hand and tied it around his neck, just like an ox. And my brother submitted.
The barber mimed placing a rope around his own neck, hunched his shoulders forward, and took several plodding steps in a circle, perfectly imitating a beast of burden. Even the caliph had to stifle a laugh.
Come now, get moving. Round with the mill. You'd do nothing but eat and idle if I let you.
He took up a whip and brought it down hard on my brother's shoulders and legs. My poor idiot brother began to howl and bellow, making sounds exactly like the ox he was replacing, but no one came to help him. All night he trudged in circles like a beast, turning the great millstone, while the miller flogged him continuously until the approach of dawn. And still, even as the whip fell, my brother thought to himself, this must be building my character for the aristocracy. When morning came, the master of the house descended to the mill. Seeing my brother still yoked and the miller still whipping him, he smiled with satisfaction and went away without a word. At full daybreak the miller departed, leaving my brother still yoked, half dead from exhaustion and beating. Soon after, the slave girl came and unbound him from the yoke.
My lady and I are so sorry for what happened. We have borne your grief with you in our hearts.
But my brother had no tongue to answer her. His voice was gone from the mill dust, his body was covered in welts, and his spirit was broken. He staggered back to his lodging and collapsed. A short while later came a man to his door, the very clerk who had drawn up the marriage contract. He greeted my brother cheerfully.
Allah give you long life. May your marriage be blessed. Tell me, does your face not show signs of pleasant sport and love-making from dusk till dawn?
My brother exploded.
Allah grant you no peace, you thousandfold cuckold. By Allah, I did nothing all night but turn the mill in place of the ox until morning.
The clerk shook his head.
Tell me the whole tale.
So my brother recounted all that had befallen him, from the first glimpse of the lady to the night of torture in the mill. The clerk shook his head.
Your star does not agree with hers. But if you wish, I can alter the contract and arrange a different match. Though I warn you, beware that another trick is not waiting for you.
My brother replied bitterly,
See if you have any other solution.
but the clerk left, and my brother returned to sitting in his shop, looking desperately for any customer who might bring him work, for he was now starving in earnest. Presently the handmaid appeared at his shop door.
My lady wishes to speak with you.
My brother answered,
Begone, girl. There shall be no more dealings between me and your lady.
The handmaid returned to her mistress and reported his words. A few moments later, the lady herself put her head out of the window, weeping.
Why, O my beloved, are there to be no more dealings between us? Why do you abandon me?
My brother made no answer for about 3 heartbeats. But she wept and pleaded, swearing by Allah that she had known nothing of the plot against him. Her husband had arranged it all without her knowledge. She was innocent of the whole cruel matter. And my fool of a brother believed her. By Allah, Commander of the Faithful, the man had just been yoked like an ox and beaten like a dog all night, and one false tear from this scheming woman was enough to bring him crawling back. When he looked up and saw her beauty and heard the sweetness of her lying speech, the anger melted from his heart like morning dew. Perhaps, he told himself, she truly did not know. Perhaps she weeps for love of me. He saluted her and spoke gently with her, and sat once more to his tailoring, ready to be fooled again.
The barber rolled his eyes heavenward and threw his hands up in exasperation, as if appealing to Allah himself to witness such unprecedented foolishness.
After a while, the handmaid came to him privately.
My mistress greets you and informs you that her husband plans to spend tonight at the house of friends. When he is gone, come to us and spend the night with my lady in joy and delight until morning.
Now, the husband had asked his wife,
How shall we finally rid ourselves of this lovesick fool?
and she had answered,
Leave it to me. I will play him one more trick that will make him a laughingstock for the entire city.
But my foolish brother suspected nothing. After being robbed of his wages, yoked like an ox, beaten like a dog, and deceived at every turn, he still believed his romantic dreams would come true. When dusk fell, the slave girl came and brought him to the house. When the lady saw him enter, she said warmly,
By Allah, O my lord, I have been longing for you with such desperate desire.
My brother, that prize fool, his body still covered in welts from the mill, his legs still lame from the beating, overcome with eagerness, cried out,
By Allah, kiss me quickly before you give me anything else.
The barber leaned forward with arms outstretched, lips pursed in an absurd kissing expression, then suddenly clapped his hands together with a sharp crack.
But hardly had the words left his mouth when the lady's husband burst in from the adjoining room. He seized my brother by the collar, shouting,
By Allah, I will not let you go until I deliver you to the chief of the city watch.
My brother tried to humble himself and beg for mercy, but the man would hear none of it. He dragged my brother before the prefect of police. The prefect sentenced him immediately to 100 lashes with a leather whip. The guards beat him without mercy. Then they mounted him on a camel and paraded him through every quarter of the city while a herald proclaimed,
This is the reward for he who violates the sanctity of honorable men's houses.
During this humiliating parade, my brother fell from the camel's back and broke his leg badly. From that day forward he was lame. Then the prefect banished him from Baghdad under official edict. He went forth not knowing where to wend his way. But I heard of his plight, and fearing for his life, I went out after him. I brought him back secretly into the city, hid him in my own house, and restored him to health. He has lived with me ever since, and I provide for his needs.
The caliph laughed heartily at the story, for truly, what man could hear of such monumental foolishness and not laugh?
By Allah, your brother was a greater fool than any I have heard of, to be yoked like an ox on his wedding night and still believe himself beloved. You have done well, O Samit. You have done well, O man of few words. You are indeed sparing a speech.
The entire court struggled to contain their laughter at this, for the barber had already been talking for more than an hour without pause. The caliph continued,
Take a gift and depart.
but the barber replied earnestly,
O commander of the faithful, I will accept nothing from your hand until I have told you what befell my other brothers. Do not think me a man of many words or excessive chatter, but you must know the complete story.
The caliph, greatly entertained, waved his hand for the barber to continue. Second brother, Al-Haddar the Babbler.
My second brother, O commander of the faithful, was named Al-Haddar the Babbler, and he was afflicted with paralysis on one side of his body, so that he walked with great difficulty, dragging one leg.
Here the barber demonstrated the lame gait, dragging his own leg stiffly behind him as he took a few halting steps.
One day as he was limping about the city, an old woman accosted him.
Stop a moment, good man, that I may tell you of something which, if it pleases you, you shall do for me, and I will pray to Allah to reward you well.
My brother stopped, and she continued.
I will show you the way to a certain opportunity, but you must not be wasteful with your words or ask too many questions.
My brother said,
Speak on.
What would you say to handsome lodgings in a fine house with a beautiful garden, flowing waters, blooming flowers, growing fruit, flowing wine, and a pretty young woman whose beauty you may enjoy from dusk until dawn? If you do as I bid you, all this shall be yours.
My brother could hardly believe his ears.
Is all this truly in the world, and available to the likes of me?
Yes, indeed, and it shall be yours. If you are reasonable, leave aside idle curiosity and excessive questions, and simply do my bidding.
My brother declared eagerly.
I will obey you in all things, O my lady.
Good. But you must understand. This young lady loves to have her own way, and cannot abide being contradicted or thwarted. If you humor her in everything, you shall attain your heart's desire.
My brother promised.
I swear, I will not cross her in any matter.
Then follow me.
And she set off through the streets. My brother hobbled after her as quickly as his lame leg would allow, burning with eagerness. At length they came to a fine, large house, handsome and well appointed, with servants and eunuchs showing every sign of wealth. The old woman led him straight through to an upper pavilion, magnificently furnished and overlooking a gorgeous garden. She seated him on a cushioned couch and said,
Wait here a moment.
My brother had scarcely taken his seat when he heard a great commotion, and in came a procession of slave girls surrounding a lady like the full moon in its glory. When he saw her radiant beauty, he rose to his feet and made a deep bow. She welcomed him with a smile and beckoned for him to sit.
Allah advance you to honor. Is all well with you?
My brother replied.
O my lady, all is most excellently well.
She clapped her hands, and servants brought in tables laden with the most delicate foods. She sat down to eat, making a great show of affection toward my brother, feeding him choice morsels and jesting with him. Though all the while she could barely refrain from laughing, frequently exchanging significant glances with her handmaidens as if they shared some private joke. My brother, in his foolish passion, understood nothing. He fancied that this great lady had fallen madly in love with him and would soon grant him his desire. When they had finished eating, 10 maidens entered bearing lutes and other instruments. They sang with voices both sweet and stirring, and wine was brought. The lady herself handed my brother a cup, and he drank it standing in respect. Then she drank, and he said, "To your health," and bowed low. She handed him another cup, and he drank it off. Then, without warning, she drew back her hand and gave him a ringing slap on the back of his neck.
The barber suddenly slapped the back of his own neck with a resounding crack, making the courtiers jump. Then he rubbed it ruefully.
My brother made as if to leave the house in anger, but the old woman caught his eye and gestured urgently for him to return. So he swallowed his pride and sat down again without a word. No sooner had he seated himself than the lady slapped him again on the nape of his neck, harder this time. But this was not enough for her amusement. She called her handmaidens, and they all began slapping and cuffing him, one after another, while he sat there taking the blows. All the while he kept murmuring to the old woman, "I never saw anything nicer than this. Surely this is how great ladies show their favor."
The barber smiled beatifically and tilted his head from side to side, as if savoring imaginary blows, drawing laughter from the assembled court.
And she kept replying, "Enough, enough! I beg you, oh my mistress, that is sufficient." But the women continued slapping him until he nearly lost consciousness. Finally my brother rose, pretending he needed to go outside to relieve himself. The old woman hurried after him and said in a low voice,
Be patient just a little longer. You are almost there. Once she is warmed with wine, you shall have everything you desire.
My brother groaned.
How much longer must I wait? This beating has made me faint.
As soon as the wine takes full effect on her, you shall have your wish.
So my brother returned and took his seat once more. All the handmaidens stood up, and the lady commanded them to perfume him with incense and sprinkle his face with rose water. Then she said to him,
Allah advance you to honor. You have entered my house and borne patiently with my conditions. For I have one rule: whoever contradicts me or refuses my wishes, I turn him out immediately. But whoever is patient and accepts my ways shall have his every desire fulfilled.
My brother said, nursing his bruised neck,
Oh, my mistress, I am your slave, and in the hollow of your hand.
Know then that Allah has made me passionately fond of playfulness and jest. Whoever falls in with my humor and my games receives whatever he wishes.
She ordered the maidens to sing again, which they did with loud, beautiful voices until the whole company was in high spirits. Then she said to one of her handmaidens,
Take this our Lord and do what is needful for him, then bring him back to me straightaway.
My brother had no idea what she meant, but the old woman whispered urgently as he left,
Be patient. There remains but little to endure, and then all your dreams come true.
The handmaid led my brother to a side chamber. He asked the old woman,
What will she do with me?
Nothing but good, as I am your ransom. She wishes only to dye your eyebrows and pluck out your mustache hairs. These are but small preparations before your union.
My brother said doubtfully,
As for dyeing my eyebrows, that will wash off easily enough. But plucking the mustache is quite painful.
Be cautious not to cross her. She has set her heart on you. Bear this small discomfort.
So my brother patiently allowed the handmaid to dye his eyebrows bright red and then pluck out his mustache hairs one by one, which brought tears to his eyes.
The barber winced dramatically and touched his own upper lip, plucking at invisible hairs and flinching with each imaginary pull.
When she had finished, she brought him back to her mistress. The lady looked at him and laughed.
There remains only one more thing. You must shave off his beard entirely, so that his face is smooth and will not scratch my delicate cheeks.
The handmaid came to tell him this, and my brother protested,
How can I do something that will disgrace me before all people?
but the old woman said urgently,
She only requires this because you will be as a smooth-faced youth to her, beauteous and appealing. She is desperately in love with you. Be patient, and you shall attain everything you desire.
So against his better judgment, my brother submitted. They shaved off his entire beard.
The barber stroked his own long white beard tenderly, as if mourning its loss, shaking his head at such folly.
When he was brought back to the lady, his eyebrows dyed bright red, his mustache plucked away, his beard completely shorn, and his cheeks rouged with cosmetics, she looked at him and burst into peals of laughter, falling back on her cushions.
Oh my lord, you have won my heart completely with your good nature and patience. Now stand up and dance for me.
My poor brother stood up and began to shuffle about and caper awkwardly with his lame leg.
The barber actually rose and performed a grotesque hobbling dance, dragging one leg behind him while waving his arms about clumsily. The caliph and his courtiers roared with laughter.
As he did so, the lady picked up a cushion and threw it at his head. Then all her handmaidens began throwing cushions, and then oranges, lemons, and citrons, pelting him from all sides until he fell to the floor in a daze. The old woman whispered as he lay there,
Now you have reached your goal. There are no more trials. Only one small thing remains. She has a custom. When she is merry with wine, she allows no man to have her until she removes all her clothes and runs naked through the rooms. Then you must strip and run after her from chamber to chamber. When your desire is at its peak, she will yield to you.
Strip at once.
So my brother, nearly mad with anticipation despite all the abuse, removed his clothes and stood there naked. The lady stripped as well, crying out,
Chase me. Catch me.
She began to run, and my brother ran after her on his lame leg, his desire overwhelming his sense.
The barber ran in place with exaggerated limping motions, arms outstretched, panting heavily as if chasing something just beyond his grasp, his long beard flying.
She raced from room to room, and he scrambled after her through the maze of chambers like a madman. Suddenly she dashed into a darkened room. My brother plunged in after her, but instantly his foot came down on something unstable. The floor gave way beneath his weight, and he fell through an opening.
The barber lurched forward and downward dramatically, as if plummeting through a trapdoor, arms windmilling wildly.
He landed with a crash in the middle of the leather seller's market, right in the center of the bazaar, naked, beardless, with his eyebrows dyed red, his face rouged, and in a state of obvious arousal.
The barber gestured to his own face and body, miming the horror of such exposure, his eyes wide with mock shame. The entire court erupted in laughter.
The merchants and customers saw him tumble from above and set up a great cry. They gathered around him, shouting and laughing and clapping their hands at this absurd sight. Then they began striking him with leather hides, beating him about the body until he lost consciousness. When he came to, they had thrown him on a donkey and were carrying him to the chief of police.
What manner of creature is this?
They reported,
This fellow fell suddenly from the wazir's house in this disgraceful state.
The chief gave him 100 lashes with a whip and banished him from Baghdad immediately. I went out after my poor brother, found him in his wretched condition, and brought him back secretly into the city. I made him a daily allowance for his living, though truly, were it not for my generous and forgiving nature, I could not have tolerated the shame he brought upon our family.
The caliph laughed uproariously, as did many in the court.
And what of your third brother?
He asked, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes. Third brother, Al-Fakik the blind man.
My third brother, O commander of the faithful, was called Al-Fakik, the one afflicted, and he was blind from birth.
Here the barber closed his own eyes and groped forward with both hands extended, taking several tentative steps to demonstrate his brother's condition.
He had taken to begging for alms in Baghdad, going from door to door and living on what charitable folk would grant him. One day he knocked at a fine house and called out in his beggar's manner,
Charity for the love of Allah, a morsel for one who cannot see.
The owner of the house, a wealthy merchant of cruel disposition, called down from an upper window,
Who is it that disturbs my rest?
A blind beggar. Master, asking only for a crust of bread or a copper coin.
My brother, his hopes rising, felt his way to the door. The merchant opened it and called from the top of the stairs.
Come up to the first floor.
My brother climbed carefully, one step at a time, feeling the wall with his hands. When he reached the landing,
Continue. Come to the second floor.
my brother climbed higher, panting with effort.
Now to the third floor.
The barber climbed in place, lifting his knees high and breathing heavily, miming the exhausting ascent, while the courtiers smiled.
At last my brother reached the third floor, exhausted.
Master, where are you?
Here. Keep coming.
My brother groped forward and suddenly found no more stairs, only empty air. He had reached the very top, but there was nowhere further to go. Master, I have reached the top. Where's the charity you promised?
Charity? The charity is this lesson. Do not be so gullible, you fool. Now find your own way down.
The merchant laughed mockingly from an upper window as he said this. My brother realized he had been cruelly deceived. Angry and humiliated, he turned to descend, but being blind and unfamiliar with the stairs, he missed his footing.
The barber suddenly staggered to one side, arms flailing as if losing his balance.
He tumbled down the entire flight, striking his head and limbs on every step, until he crashed into the street door at the bottom with his head bleeding and his body bruised all over. Some passers-by found him there, bleeding and groaning. They gave him a few coppers in pity. My brother took his coins and limped away, cursing the cruelty of wealthy men. Later that same day, my brother encountered two other blind beggars who were his companions in misfortune. They greeted one another, and one said, "Brother, let us go to my lodging and count our day's takings together, then share a meal." They agreed and went to my brother's humble room. There, the three blind men sat in a circle and emptied their purses, feeling each coin carefully.
The barber extended both hands, palms up, and moved his fingers delicately as if counting invisible coins by touch, his eyes still closed, swaying slightly as he counted.
They had, among them, a considerable sum.
This is more than we need for tonight. Let us keep out enough for food and bury the rest in a safe place.
They dug a small hole in the corner of the room and buried the surplus coins. Then they sent out for bread, meat, and fruit and sat down to eat their supper together. Now, unknown to them, the wealthy merchant who had mocked my brother earlier had been struck by curiosity. He followed the three blind men through the streets and slipped into the room behind them, hiding in a dark corner when they buried their money. The three blind men sat and began to eat, talking amongst themselves.
They cannot see me. Why should I not eat their food as well?
He crept forward silently and reached out to take bread from their plate. But as he chewed, my brother, whose hearing had grown sharp through blindness, stopped in mid-bite. "Brothers," he whispered, "do you hear that?" "Hear what?" asked the others. "There is someone else chewing." The other two blind men listened carefully. "By Allah, you are right. There is a fourth person eating with us." My brother swept his hand across the space before him.
The barber suddenly thrust his arm out in a wide arc, fingers curved like claws searching for an intruder.
His hand struck something solid, a stranger's arm. Then my brother suddenly cried out as he struck the intruder.
"Thief! Intruder!"
The barber threw wild punches in the air, wrestling with an imaginary opponent, stumbling about with his eyes closed to represent the chaotic fight of blind men. The caliph and his courtiers were already beginning to laugh.
They shouted,
"Help! Help! We are being robbed."
The merchant, finding himself trapped and beaten by three blind beggars, quickly conceived a cunning plan. He began to cry out even louder than they.
Help! Help! I am being attacked. I am a poor blind beggar like yourselves, and these criminals are trying to rob me.
The city watch burst into the room and seized all four of them.
What is this commotion?
My brother and his companions all spoke at once.
"Captain, we were eating peacefully when this intruder came to rob us. We caught him in the act."
But the merchant, speaking with great conviction, declared,
Captain, I am a poor blind beggar who came to share a simple meal with my fellow unfortunates. But these three are not truly blind at all. They are criminals who only pretend to be blind so they may beg more effectively and scout out houses to rob. I discovered their secret, and now they seek to silence me.
My brother protested.
"What nonsense! We are truly blind. He is the faker and the thief."
The merchant shouted back.
You are all liars and criminals.
He was still pretending to be blind himself, groping about dramatically.
The barber flailed his arms wildly in front of him, bumping into invisible objects and stumbling about in an exaggerated pantomime of false blindness. Even the caliph had to cover his mouth to suppress his laughter.
The captain shouted.
Enough. Bring them all before the governor.
When they were hauled before the governor, the merchant spoke first, with great confidence.
"O governor, I denounce these 3 men as frauds. They pretend to be blind, but they can see perfectly well. They use this disguise to rob honest citizens."
The governor listened and then spoke gravely.
That is a serious accusation. What proof have you?
"Test them, O governor. You will see they can navigate perfectly and respond to visual signs. They are criminals of the worst sort, those who exploit the pity meant for the truly afflicted."
The governor studied the 4 men before him.
Very well. Let us test this claim. Guards, beat the accuser first. If he is telling the truth, he will bear the punishment as a blind man does.
The guards seized the merchant and began to beat him with rods. At first he cried out in pain, keeping his eyes tightly shut. But as the blows increased in severity and number, he could not help himself. He opened his eyes to see when the next blow would fall.
The barber's eyes flew open in feigned terror, his head jerking from side to side, as if watching a rod descending, his hands raised protectively. The courtiers burst into laughter.
The governor reacted with surprise.
This one can see. He opened his eyes.
The merchant, realizing he was caught, immediately changed his story.
"Forgive me, O governor. You have discovered my deception. Yes, I can see. I only pretended to be blind because..."
He paused, thinking quickly.
"Because these 3 criminals robbed my house last week. I followed them in disguise to recover my stolen property."
Then the governor ordered a search.
Search them.
The guards searched my brother and his companions and found on them the money they had earned begging, a considerable sum, since they had been collecting alms for many days. The merchant declared triumphantly,
"Here is the stolen property. They took twice this much from my house."
My brother protested.
It is not stolen. We earned this money through honest begging. We are truly blind. This man is a liar and a thief who invaded our dwelling."
But the governor, having caught the merchant in one lie and seeing the blind men with substantial money, now suspected everyone.
I will get to the truth of this matter. Beat all of them until they confess.
The guards fell upon my brother and his 2 companions with rods. The 3 blind men, being truly helpless, could not even see the blows coming or dodge them. They were beaten far worse than the merchant had been.
The barber hunched his shoulders, wincing and twisting his body as if absorbing cruel blows from all directions, crying out in imaginary pain.
They screamed and wept, but the governor only grew angrier at their cries. The governor made his final judgment and pointed at the merchant.
Enough. I judge that all of you are liars and troublemakers. You will pay a fine of 100 dirhams for wasting the court's time with your false disguise. And you 3, I confiscate all your money as punishment for disturbing the peace and bringing false accusations.
My brother cried out in plea.
"But governor, we are innocent. That money is all we have in the world."
Then you should not have created such a disturbance.
The governor waved his hand dismissively.
Furthermore, I banish all 3 of you from Baghdad. If you are found within the city walls after tomorrow, you will receive 200 lashes each.
The guards threw them out of the palace. My brother and his companions found themselves on the street, beaten, penniless, and banished, all because a cruel rich man had decided to mock a blind beggar for sport. The merchant, meanwhile, having paid his fine of 100 dirhams but recovering several times that amount from the blind men's confiscated earnings, went home well pleased with his successful day. He had gained profit from his cruelty.
The barber threw his hands up in exasperation, then shook his head slowly, stroking his long beard in a gesture of profound disgust at such injustice.
I heard of my brother's plight and went out beyond the city walls to search for him. I found him wandering in misery with his two companions, all three of them weeping at their unjust fate. I brought my brother back secretly into the city, hid him in my house, and gave him lodging and a daily allowance for his food. He has lived with me ever since, for truly, where else could a blind beggar go after being banished and robbed by those who should have shown him mercy?
The caliph shook his head in wonder.
Your brother suffered great injustice. That merchant was truly a villain. But tell me, what of your fourth brother?
Fourth brother, Alcuz, the one-eyed butcher.
Now as for my fourth brother, O commander of the faithful, he was called Alcuz, the long-necked Guglet, from his habit of overflowing with words. He became a butcher in Baghdad and sold fine meat and fattened rams. Great men and wealthy merchants bought their meat from him, so that he amassed considerable wealth and acquired cattle and property. He fared thus for a long while. Then one day, as he was sitting in his shop, there came to him an old man with a long, flowing beard. The Ancient One laid down some silver coins and said,
Give me meat for this.
My brother gave him his money's worth of flesh, and the graybeard went his way. My brother examined the silver the man had given him and, seeing that the dirhams were bright and genuine, set them in a special place apart from his other money.
The barber held an imaginary coin up to the light, turning it this way and that, nodding with satisfaction.
The old man continued to return to the shop regularly, and this went on for 5 months. Each time, my brother carefully stored the silver coins the old fellow paid him in their own special box. At last my brother thought to take out this money to buy more sheep for his trade. He opened the box and found in it nothing but scraps of white paper, cut round to look like coins. There was not a single dirham of real silver among them.
The barber mimed opening a box, peering inside with eager anticipation. Then his face fell dramatically. He picked up imaginary scraps of paper, squinting at them in horror, letting them flutter from his fingers one by one.
My brother beat his face and cried out in dismay. The folk of the market gathered around him, and he told them his tale, which made them marvel exceedingly. From that day forward, my brother kept watch, slaughtering his animals as usual and hanging the carcasses in his shop. He kept thinking to himself,
Oh, Allah, would that the ill-omened old villain would return.
Not an hour had passed before the graybeard appeared, carrying his silver as before. My brother rose immediately and caught hold of him, calling out loudly,
Come, O Muslims, aid me against this man and hear my story.
The barber sprang forward, seizing an invisible figure by the collar with both hands, shaking it vigorously.
The old man, when he heard this commotion, said quietly to my brother,
Which will be better for you, to let go of me peacefully, or to be utterly disgraced before all these people?
Here the barber relaxed his grip and adopted a sly, sinister expression, speaking in a low, menacing tone.
In what way will you disgrace me?
In this way, I will reveal to everyone that you sell human flesh as mutton.
You lie, you accursed villain.
Nay, the accursed one is he who has a dead man hanging up for sale in his shop. If what I say is false, I give you leave to take my money, my property, and even my life.
Then the old man called out in a loud voice,
Oh, all you people, if you would prove the truth of my words, enter this butcher's shop.
The crowd rushed forward into the shop, and by some devilish trick or spell, they found that the sheep's carcass hanging there had become a dead human being, hung up for sale like meat.
The barber's eyes widened in mock horror, and he recoiled dramatically, pointing with a trembling finger at an invisible horror hanging before him. He clutched his chest and staggered backward, as if the very sight would strike him dead.
The people set upon my poor brother, crying out,
O infidel! O villain! You would make us eat the flesh of men?
Even his best friends fell to cuffing and beating him, crying,
Have you been feeding us human flesh all this time?
The barber acted out being pummeled from all sides, ducking and weaving, covering his head with his arms.
The old man himself struck my brother hard and put out one of his eyes.
The barber delivered a sharp jabbing motion with his finger, then covered his own right eye with his palm, wincing and staggering as if freshly wounded.
Then they bound my brother and dragged the human corpse before the chief of the city watch. The old man said to the chief,
"O Emir, this man butchers people and sells their flesh as mutton. We have brought him to you. Execute the judgment of Allah upon him."
My brother would have defended himself, but the chief refused to listen. He sentenced my brother to receive 500 blows with rods and ordered the confiscation of all my brother's property. Indeed, had it not been for that same property, which my brother used as bribes, they would surely have executed him. Then the chief banished him from Baghdad. My brother set out, not knowing where to turn, and traveled until he came to another great city. There he thought it best to set up as a cobbler, since he had lost everything else. He opened a small shop and sat there mending shoes, doing what he could to earn his bread. One day he went out on an errand and heard the distant sound of horses' hooves. He asked the cause and was told,
"The king is going out to hunt."
My brother stopped at the roadside to watch the royal procession pass.
The barber straightened up proudly, one hand shading his eyes as he gazed into the distance.
As the king rode by, his eye happened to fall upon my brother. Immediately the king hung down his head and said,
I seek refuge with Allah from the evil of this day.
Then he turned his horse around and rode back to his palace, and all his retinue turned back with him. The hunt was cancelled.
The barber's expression changed to one of exaggerated revulsion. He averted his face dramatically, throwing one hand up as if to block the sight of something horrible, then pivoted sharply and marched in the opposite direction with great haste.
The king gave orders to his guards, and they seized my brother and beat him with a beating so painful that he nearly died. When they finally released him, my brother still did not understand what he had done wrong. Later he went to one of the king's household and related what had happened. The man laughed until he fell over backward. When he recovered, he said,
"O my brother, know that this king cannot bear to look upon a man with one eye, especially if he is blind in the right eye. If he sees such a person, he will not rest until he has had that person killed."
When my brother heard this, he resolved to flee from that city at once. He departed and traveled until he reached another town where no one knew him. There he lived for a long while. One day, being full of sorrowful thought, he went out to walk and ease his mind. As he strolled along, he suddenly heard the distant tramp of horses behind him. He said to himself,
"The judgment of Allah is upon me."
He looked desperately for a hiding place but found none. At last he saw a large door which stood slightly ajar. He pushed it hard, and it yielded. He entered quickly and found himself in a long gallery. He took refuge there, holding his breath.
The barber crept forward in an exaggerated tiptoe, pressing himself flat against an invisible wall, his finger to his lips, eyes darting nervously from side to side.
But hardly had he concealed himself when two men suddenly appeared and seized him. They cried.
The barber suddenly lunged forward, grabbing at the air with both hands as if seizing an intruder, his face transformed into an expression of righteous fury.
Allah be thanked for delivering you into our hands, O enemy of God. These 3 nights you have robbed us of all rest and sleep. You have made us taste the cup of death with your threats.
"O good people, what ails you? What have I done to you?"
You skulk about seeking to disgrace us. You plot to cut the throat of the master of this house. Is it not enough that you have already brought him to beggary, you and your gang? But now, give us the knife with which you threaten us every night.
They searched him and found in his belt the knife he used for his cobbler's work for cutting leather.
The barber patted his own waist, then drew out an imaginary blade, holding it up triumphantly as evidence.
"O people, fear Allah and do not maltreat me. Know that my story is strange, and I am no threat to you."
The barber clasped his hands together in a pleading gesture, his voice rising in desperate supplication.
And what is your story?
So my brother told them everything that had befallen him, hoping they would show mercy and release him. but instead of compassion, they paid no heed to his words. They beat him severely and tore off his clothes. Finding on his body the scars from his previous beatings, they said,
"O accursed one! These marks are clear proof of your guilt. You have been punished before for these very crimes."
The barber traced lines across his arms and torso, indicating old scars, then shook his head with a rueful smile at the terrible irony.
They carried him before the governor of the city. My brother said to himself,
I am now punished for all my past sins. None can save me but Allah Almighty.
The governor addressed him sternly.
O villain! What led you to enter this house with the intention of murder?
I conjure you by Allah, O Amir, hear my words and do not be hasty in judging me.
But the governor cried,
Shall we listen to the words of a robber who has beggared this household? Look, he bears upon his body the scars of his previous punishments.
He sentenced my brother to 100 cuts with the scourge. After this, they set him on a camel and paraded him about the city, with a herald proclaiming,
This is the punishment, and far too lenient, for one who breaks into people's houses with intent to rob and murder.
The barber hunched his shoulders and swayed from side to side, mimicking someone perched uncomfortably atop a camel while being paraded in shame. He kept his eyes downcast, occasionally glancing up with an expression of utter humiliation.
Then they thrust him out beyond the city walls and forbade him ever to return.
The barber made a pushing motion with both hands, as if shoving someone out a gate, then dusted off his palms dismissively.
My brother wandered in the wilderness, more dead than alive. Eventually I heard what had befallen him. I went in search of him, found him in that miserable state, and brought him back secretly to the city. There I made him an allowance for his food and drink, and he dwells with me still.
The caliph shook his head in amazement.
Truly, your brothers have met with extraordinary misfortunes. Tell me of the fifth.
Fifth brother, Al-Nashar, the daydreamer.
My fifth brother, O commander of the faithful, was called Al-Nashar the babbler, and the same who was cropped of both ears.
The barber shook his head sorrowfully, though a glint of amusement danced in his eyes.
He was an idle fellow who used to beg of folk by night and live on their alms by day. Now when our father, an old man well advanced in years, sickened and died, he left us an inheritance of 700 dirhams, so that each son received his portion of 100. When my fifth brother received his share, he was perplexed and knew not what to do with such a sum. At last he decided to invest it in trade. He bought 100 dirhams worth of glassware of all sorts, cups, plates, bowls, and delicate vessels, and put it all on a large tray. Then he sat down on a bench at the foot of a wall, set the tray before him, and leaned back against the wall to wait for customers.
The barber leaned back himself, mimicking his brother's posture with exaggerated laziness.
As he sat there with his entire capital arrayed before him on the tray, he fell into deep thought and began to speak to himself.
Know, O my soul, that I have invested 100 dirhams in this glassware. I will surely sell it for 200, doubling my money. Then I will immediately buy more glass with those 200 and sell it for 400. I will continue in this manner, buying and selling, selling and buying, until I have amassed 4,000 dirhams. Nay, I will not stop there. Soon I shall have 10,000 dinars of capital.
The barber's hands gestured wildly, miming the counting of coins and the accumulation of imaginary wealth.
With that sum, I will leave off dealing in glass and turn to trading in jewels, precious gems, and valuable perfumes. I will buy and sell these until, Allah willing, my capital reaches 100,000 dinars. Then I will purchase a magnificent house with white slaves and eunuchs and fine horses. I will eat the most delicious foods and drink the finest wines. I will summon to my palace every singing man and singing woman in the city, and they will perform for me while I recline on cushions.
The barber spread his arms wide as if embracing this grand vision, his eyes gazing into the distance.
All this he planned in his mind while staring at the tray of glass before him, worth 100 dirhams.
The barber's voice dropped to emphasize the irony, and he held up a single finger.
Then he continued his fantasy.
And when my wealth has grown to 100,000 dinars, I will send out marriage brokers to seek the daughters of kings and ministers. I will ask for the hand of the wazir's eldest daughter, for it has reached me that she is perfect in beauty, prime in loveliness, and accomplished beyond measure. I will offer a marriage settlement of 1,000 dinars of gold. If her father consents, well and good. But if he refuses, I will take her by force from beneath his very nose. When she is safely installed in my house, I will buy 10 little eunuch boys. For myself, I will purchase robes fit for kings and sultans, and a saddle of gold set thick with precious gems. Then I will mount my horse with the eunuchs and guards before me and behind me, surrounding me on all sides, and I will ride through the city in procession while all the people salute me and call down blessings upon me.
The barber sat upright, chin lifted high, hand raised in a regal wave to invisible crowds.
I will proceed thus to the wazir's house, he who is father to the girl. I will arrive with my armed slaves before and behind me, to my right and to my left. When the wazir sees me coming, he will stand up to greet me and seat me in his own place, while he sits far below me, for am I not to be his son-in-law?
The barber puffed out his chest with mock importance.
Now, I will have with me 2 eunuchs, each carrying a purse of 1,000 dinars. One purse contains the marriage settlement, which I will deliver to the wazir. The other purse I will give him as a pure gift, so that he may know my generosity, my nobility of spirit, and how little I regard worldly wealth.
He made a dismissive gesture with his hand, as if tossing gold coins carelessly.
For every 10 words he addresses to me, I will answer him with but 2, showing my dignity.
The barber pressed his lips together primly, and gave a curt nod.
Then I will return to my house. If anyone comes from the bride's family bearing gifts, I will reward him handsomely with money and fine clothing. But if they bring me gifts, I will refuse to accept them and return them all. This will show my proud and lofty spirit, which refuses to be obligated to anyone. Thus I will establish my rank and reputation throughout the city. When all is prepared, I will appoint the wedding night. I will don my finest garments and sit upon a mattress of gold brocade. I will recline against a cushion embroidered with precious thread, turning neither to right nor to left, gazing only straight ahead, such is the haughtiness of my mind and the gravity of my bearing. And there before me will stand my bride in all her wedding raiment and ornaments, as lovely as the full moon. But I, in my loftiness and lordly pride, will not even glance at her.
My brother acted out this scene, tilting his head back and half closing his eyes in an expression of supreme disdain.
Those present will say to me, O our lord, O our master! Your wife, your handmaid, stands before you. Vouchsafe her but one look, for the standing wearies her. They will kiss the ground before me many times, pleading with me. Only then will I raise my eyes and cast upon her one single glance, then immediately turn my face down again.
He demonstrated, barely flicking his eyes sideways before returning to his haughty pose.
Then they will lead her away to the bridal chamber to change her garments. I will rise and put on even more splendid clothing. When they bring her back a second time, again I will refuse to look at her until they have begged me repeatedly. Again I will glance at her from the corner of one eye only, then bend my head down. I will persist in this behavior through all the traditional stages of displaying the bride. When at last the displaying is finished, they will bring me a purse of 500 dinars, which I will distribute as largesse among the tire women and servants. Then they will lead me to the bridal chamber. When I am alone with my bride, I will neither look at her nor speak to her. I will lie down beside her with my face turned to the wall, ignoring her completely, so that everyone may know how high and mighty I am. Presently her mother will come to me. She will kiss my head and my hands and say, O my lord, look upon your handmaid who yearns for your favor. Do not break her spirit with your coldness. But I will make her no answer. When the mother sees I remain silent, she will stand and kiss my feet many times, saying, "O my lord, truly my daughter is a beautiful maiden who has never known any man. If you show her this aversion, you will break her heart. I beg you, incline toward her and speak gently to her. Then she will rise and bring a cup of wine. She will say to her daughter, 'Take this cup and offer it to your lord with your own hand.' The girl will come toward me, the cup extended, but I will keep my elbow propped upon this round cushion, leaning lazily back."
Here my brother actually leaned back against the wall and propped his elbow up on an imaginary cushion, his nose in the air.
I will not even look at her as she stands there. She will plead, "O my lord, I beg you by Allah, do not refuse to take this cup from the hand of your handmaid, for truly I am your slave." But I will not speak. She will press the cup to my lips, urging me to drink. And I, when my patience is exhausted, will shake my fist in her face, like this.
So saying, my brother let out a kick with his foot, demonstrating how he would strike at his imaginary bride, and his foot struck the tray of glassware. The tray flipped off the bench and crashed to the ground. Every piece of glass shattered into countless fragments.
"O most accursed of pimps! See what your pride has done."
The barber slapped his own forehead dramatically, then mimed tearing at imaginary clothes.
Then he beat his face with both hands and tore his clothes, weeping bitterly over the destruction of his entire capital. The folk who were on their way to Friday prayers saw him and stopped. Some pitied him, but others paid him no heed.
The barber shook his head slowly, spreading his hands wide in a gesture of total loss.
And thus my brother lost both his principal and his profit in a single moment. He remained sitting there, weeping, for a long while. At last there rode past a beautiful, noble lady, emanating the scent of musk and mounted on a mule with a gold-worked saddle. She was on her way to Friday prayers, followed by several eunuchs. When she saw my brother and the broken glass scattered around him and learned what had happened, her kind heart was moved. She called one of her eunuchs and said, "Give what you have with you to this poor man." The eunuch approached and handed my brother a purse. When my brother opened it, he found inside 500 dinars of gold. He nearly died of joy. He blessed the lady repeatedly and returned to his lodging, now a man of means. As he sat contemplating his good fortune, someone knocked at his door. He opened it to find an old woman whom he had never seen before.
"My son, know that the hour of prayer is near, and I have not yet performed my ablutions. Might I use your facilities to wash?"
"By all means."
He showed her in and provided water. When the old woman had finished her ablutions, she came to where he sat and prayed a two-bow prayer. Then she blessed him with a godly benediction. My brother, grateful and feeling generous with his newfound wealth, put his hand into his purse and gave her 2 dinars.
The barber's eyes twinkled knowingly as he hunched forward, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper.
"Glory be to Allah! Why do you treat me as if I were a beggar? I have no need of this. Keep your money. Or better yet, if you truly do not need it, return it to the lady who gave it to you, for she is my mistress."
My brother's heart leaped.
"O mother, by what means might I meet this generous lady?"
The barber's voice rose with his brother's excitement, his eyebrows lifting high.
The old woman smiled.
The barber's own smile turned sly and predatory.
"She has an inclination toward you, my son. But there is one difficulty: she is the wife of a wealthy and powerful man. If you take all your money with you and follow me, I can guide you to her when her husband is away. Perhaps you may enjoy her beauty and her wealth together."
My brother needed no further encouragement. He took the entire purse of 500 dinars and followed the old woman through the streets, hardly believing his amazing fortune. She led him through various quarters until they came before a tall gate. She knocked, and a Greek slave girl came out and opened to them. The old woman led my brother through a great sitting room spread with magnificent carpets and hung with curtains of silk. She told him to sit, and he did so, setting his purse of gold before him and placing his turban on his lap, feeling quite at home. He had scarcely settled himself when a young lady entered. Never had eyes beheld a fairer. She was clad in sumptuous garments, adorned with jewels. My brother rose to his feet immediately. She smiled and welcomed him warmly, bidding him to be seated. When he sat, she sat beside him and toyed with him a while, speaking sweetly.
Do not stir from your place until I return to you,
She said, and departed. Meanwhile, as my brother sat congratulating himself on his good fortune, suddenly there came into the room a huge black slave, massive in build, holding a drawn sword in his hand.
The barber's eyes widened with theatrical alarm, and he thrust out his arm as if brandishing a sword.
The slave roared at my brother.
The barber's voice dropped to a thunderous bellow.
Woe to you! Who brought you here? What do you want in this place?
He cowered back, voice suddenly small and trembling.
My brother was struck dumb with terror and could not utter a word.
Then the barber mimed striking blows.
The slave seized him, stripped off all his clothes, and began beating him with the flat of his sword, striking him again and again until my brother fell to the ground unconscious. The slave, thinking my brother was dead, called out.
Where's the salt girl?
A handmaid came running with a large tray of salt. The slave began rubbing the salt into my brother's wounds. But my brother, though in agony, did not stir or cry out, fearing the slave would realize he still lived and finish killing him. After this, the salt girl left, and the slave cried out.
Where's the cellar keeper?
The old woman appeared and dragged my brother by his feet. She pulled him to a trap door, opened it, and threw him down into a dark cellar among a heap of dead bodies. My brother lay there for 2 full days among the corpses. But Allah had made the salt a means of preserving his life, for it staunched the flow of blood from his wounds. When my brother felt some strength returning, he rose carefully in the darkness and found the trap door. He pushed it open slowly and crept out in the night, keeping to the shadows. Allah protected him. He made his way through the dark streets until dawn, when he saw the accursed old woman leaving the house in search of new victims. He followed her at a distance, unseen, and marked where she went. Then he returned to his own lodging, or what remained of it, for he had lost everything. He tended his wounds and rested until he was somewhat recovered. All the while, he watched for the old woman, tracking her movements and observing her patterns. He saw her accost one man after another, always with the same story, always leading them to that same house of death. When my brother had healed enough to move freely, he took a piece of cloth and fashioned it into a large bag. He filled the bag with pieces of broken glass from his shattered merchandise and tied it around his waist beneath his clothes. Then he disguised himself as a Persian merchant, with foreign garments and a turban in the Persian style. He concealed a sharp sword under his robes. One day he encountered the old woman in the market. Speaking Arabic with a heavy Persian accent, he said,
Venerable lady, I am a foreign merchant, newly arrived in this city where I know no one. Have you a pair of scales? I need to weigh 1,100 dinars of gold. I will give you a portion for your trouble.
The old woman's eyes gleamed.
I have a son who is a money changer. He has scales of all sizes. Come with me before he goes out for the day, and he will weigh your gold.
Lead the way, mother.
She brought him to that same house. The young woman herself opened the door, and the old woman smiled broadly.
I bring you fine, fat prey today.
The lady took my brother by the hand and led him to the familiar chamber. She sat with him briefly, speaking sweetly, then excused herself.
Do not stir from your seat until I return.
She left. Then in came the black slave, sword in hand.
Get up, you doomed fool.
My brother rose, and as the slave walked ahead of him toward the cellar, my brother drew his hidden sword and struck the slave's neck with all his might. The head flew from the body and fell to the floor. My brother dragged the corpse toward the cellar trapdoor and called out.
Where's the salt girl?
The handmaid came running with her tray of salt. When she saw my brother standing there, sword in hand and the slave's body at his feet, she turned to flee. But he struck her down as well. Then he shouted,
Where's the cellar keeper?
The old woman entered. When she saw him, her face went white. My brother demanded,
Do you know me, ill-omened hag?
No, my lord.
I am the man whose money you stole, whom you led to this house of death. I am the owner of the 500 dinars.
Fear Allah. Spare me.
but he struck her with his sword and cut her into 4 pieces. Then he went in search of the young woman. When she saw him approaching, bloody sword in hand, she fell to her knees.
Mercy. Quarter.
Tell me, what is your part in this wickedness? How did you come to consort with that black murderer?
Weeping, she answered,
I was a slave to a merchant. This old woman used to visit me regularly, and I grew fond of her. One day she said to me, "We are having a wedding celebration at our house the like of which has never been seen. Would you like to come and enjoy the sight?" I agreed, dressed in my finest clothes, and took with me a purse containing 100 gold dinars. She brought me to this very house. No sooner had I entered than the black slave seized me. I have been held prisoner here for 3 years, forced to help lure other victims to their deaths, all through the treachery of that accursed old woman.
Is there wealth in this house?
Great stores of it. If you can carry it away, do so, and may Allah bless you with it.
She opened several chests and rooms, and my brother saw more wealth than he had ever imagined: gold, jewels, fine clothes, and precious objects of every kind. He was astounded. The woman said to him,
Go now and fetch men to help you carry all this away. I will wait here.
My brother went out and hired 10 strong porters. But when he returned to the house, he found the door standing wide open.
The barber's smile froze, and he paused for effect.
The young woman had vanished, and most of the easily portable wealth had gone with her. Only some heavier items and household goods remained.
The barber clapped a hand to his forehead and laughed ruefully.
My brother realized the clever woman had outwitted him. Nevertheless, he took what was left, a considerable sum still, and spent the night rejoicing in his fortune. But in the morning, when he opened his door, he found 20 armed troopers waiting. They laid hands on him immediately.
The governor summons you.
My brother begged them to let him return to his house to secure his belongings, and he even offered them a large bribe to release him. But they refused, bound him with ropes, and dragged him through the streets to the governor's palace. On the way, they encountered a friend of my brother's. My brother caught hold of his garment and clung to it, begging,
Oh, my friend, I implore you to stand by me and help deliver me from these men.
The man demanded to know what was happening.
This fellow's house is full of stolen goods. The governor has ordered us to bring him in.
My brother's friend offered them 500 dinars on the spot to release him.
When you return to the governor, simply tell him you could not find the man.
But they would not accept the bribe. They dragged my brother before the governor and forced him to his knees. The governor demanded,
Where did you get all those goods and money?
I beg for mercy.
The governor handed him a kerchief, a symbolic grant of pardon in exchange for a full confession. So my brother told him everything from beginning to end: the old woman's treachery, the house of murder, the black slave, and the cellar full of corpses, and how he had fought back and found the treasure. My brother concluded,
Take what you will from what I recovered, but leave me enough to live on.
But the governor seized everything for himself: all the gold, all the goods, everything my brother had rescued. Moreover, Fearing that word of this matter might reach the Sultan's ears and raise uncomfortable questions, he summoned my brother and said sternly,
Leave this city at once, or I will have you hanged.
As you command.
My brother immediately departed from the city. But on the road, he fell among thieves. They stripped him, beat him severely, and cut off both his ears as punishment for his supposed crimes.
The barber touched both sides of his own head where ears would be missing, his expression a mixture of pity and amusement.
I heard news of my brother's misfortunes. I went out and searched for him, found him in his wretched state, and brought him back secretly to the city. There I gave him an allowance for his food and drink, and he dwells with me to this day.
The barber spread his hands with a theatrical sigh, as if to say, Such is the burden I bear. The Caliph was thoroughly entertained.
And your sixth brother? What befell him?
Sixth brother, Shakashik, and the Barmecide's feast.
My sixth brother, O commander of the faithful Shakashik, or many clamors, the same who was shorn of both lips, was once a man of wealth.
The barber paused, his face taking on a sympathetic expression.
But fortune turned against him, and he became poor. One day, finding himself desperately hungry, he went out to beg for something to keep life in him.
He clutched his own belly dramatically.
As he wandered the streets, he came upon a large and magnificent mansion with a wide, lofty entrance.
The barber spread his arms, wide to show the vastness.
There sat several well-dressed eunuchs, monitoring who came and went. My brother asked one of the idlers there whose house it was. It belongs to a great man of the Barmecide family.
The barber's voice dropped with reverence.
My brother approached the doorkeepers and asked for alms. Enter by the great gate, and you shall receive what you seek from our master the wazir. My brother passed through the outer entrance and walked onward through courtyards and passages.
The barber gestured as if walking through imaginary halls.
The house was magnificent, built of marble, hung with curtains, with a garden in the center such as he had never seen. Not knowing quite where to go, he continued until he came to a splendid sitting chamber. At the far end sat a man of noble bearing with a handsome, well-groomed beard. When this personage saw my brother, he stood up immediately and welcomed him warmly.
What brings you here, my friend?
O my lord, I am in need. I am hungry and seek charity.
The barber's face transformed into exaggerated horror.
The Barmecide showed great distress at this news. He mimed tearing his own robe.
What? Am I in a city where you are going hungry, and yet I knew nothing of it? I cannot bear this disgrace.
He promised my brother all manner of hospitality and comfort.
There is no help for it. You must stay with me and eat of my food.
O my lord, I can wait no longer, for truly I am dying of hunger.
Boy, bring water and basin that our guest may wash his hands.
The barber shouted dramatically, then looked around theatrically, eyes searching.
My brother looked around but saw no boy, no basin, and no water. Yet the Barmecide began rolling up his sleeves and pantomiming the washing of his hands, rubbing them together as if using soap and rinsing them with invisible water.
Here the barber himself began rolling up his own sleeves and rubbing his hands together vigorously, as if soaping and rinsing them with great care.
Come, my guest. Wash your hands and do not be shy.
My brother, confused but beginning to understand that this might be some kind of test, mimicked the Barmecide's actions, pretending to wash his hands with the invisible soap and water.
The barber nodded approvingly at his brother's quick wit.
Excellent. Now, boy, bring us the table. Bring food.
The barber spread his hands as if to indicate the arrival of a great feast.
Again, no servant appeared, and no table came. But the Barmecide acted as though a feast had been set before them. He moved his hands as if arranging dishes and sat down as if at a laden table.
The barber arranged invisible platters before himself, carefully positioning each imaginary dish.
Come, honor me by eating. Do not be ashamed or hold back. You are famished, eat heartily.
He kept moving his hands as though taking food and eating, smacking his lips and chewing with apparent pleasure.
The barber smacked his own lips loudly and chewed with exaggerated relish at the empty air.
Eat. I wonder to see you eating so sparingly. Do not hold back when you are so hungry.
My brother, realizing he was indeed being tested for his patience and wit, began to mimic eating as well. He moved his jaws as if chewing and swallowing.
How do you like this bread? I find it particularly excellent.
The barber mimed tearing a chunk from an invisible loaf, his fingers working delicately.
Oh my lord, never in all my days have I tasted bread so white or so delicious.
This bread was baked by a slave girl I purchased for 500 dinars. Boy, bring in the meat pudding for our first course, and be sure there is plenty of fat in it. Tell the cook I want it rich and well seasoned.
The barber's chest puffed with pride. Then he turned.
Oh my guest, by Allah, have you ever tasted anything better than this meat pudding?
The barber scooped up phantom portions with an invisible spoon, bringing them to his mouth and chewing thoughtfully.
My brother moved his hands as if taking portions of the invisible dish and chewing.
Never, my lord. It is magnificent.
Then eat your fill. Boy, bring the marinated stew with the fatted fowl in it.
The barber made a grand sweeping gesture as if receiving an enormous platter.
The Barmecide acted as if receiving another dish and presented it with a flourish.
Up and eat, O my guest. By Allah, you must be truly hungry.
So my brother continued his pantomime of eating, moving his jaws up and down, champing and chewing at the empty air, while the Barmecide called for dish after imaginary dish.
The barber's jaws worked furiously, his head bobbing with each imaginary bite, occasionally pausing to lick invisible sauce from his fingers.
Boy, bring us the chickens stuffed with pistachio nuts. These chickens, my friend, have been fattened on nothing but pistachios, the most expensive delicacy. Eat, for you have never tasted their like.
The barber mimed tearing meat from phantom chicken bones, making appreciative noises.
Oh my lord, they are exceptional.
The Barmecide continued to enumerate courses, fish and fowl, stews and roasts, side dishes and garnishes, describing each in loving detail, urging my brother to eat heartily of each one. My brother's real hunger increased with every imaginary course, but he maintained his composure, faithfully acting his part. At last the Barmecide said,
Boy, bring in the sweets. Bring the almond conserve and the honey fritters.
The barber's fingers delicately pinched an imaginary pastry.
He pretended to take a piece of pastry.
Eat of this. Notice how the syrup runs from it.
The barber tilted his hand as if watching honey drip.
And this almond conserve, I have my cook put a full dinar's weight of musk into every bowl, and half that amount of ambergris.
My brother kept wagging his head and working his jaws as if eating.
The barber's expression shifted to show barely concealed agony.
Though by now his stomach was cramping with real hunger.
He pressed a hand to his belly.
Enough of the main courses. Boy, bring us the dessert. Bring almonds and walnuts and raisins and dried figs and dates.
He made as if eating from each dish of nuts and dried fruits.
Eat. Do not be shy. Fill yourself.
Oh my lord, truly I am full. I can eat no more.
The barber leaned back and patted his stomach as if stuffed.
But you must try just a bit more. Here, have some of these almonds. They are from my own gardens. And these figs are from my estate.
The barber leaned forward again eagerly.
By Allah, my lord, I am completely satisfied.
The barber rubbed his own stomach in slow circles, his face showing the irony of the gesture.
Then we shall have wine. Boy, bring us the wine.
The barber's face lit up with anticipation. He made the motions of receiving a wine flask and cup, cradling an invisible flask in one hand and holding up an invisible cup with the other.
filling an invisible cup with invisible wine.
He tilted the phantom flask carefully, watching the non-existent liquid pour.
He pretended to drink it himself, then handed the phantom cup to my brother.
The barber extended his hand as if passing a delicate goblet.
Take this cup. Tell me if you have ever tasted finer wine.
My brother pretended to take the cup and drink.
The barber raised his hand to his lips and threw back his head.
Oh, my lord, it is notable indeed. But I must tell you, I am accustomed to drinking wine that has been aged 20 years or more.
Then we shall have older wine. Boy, bring us from the special reserve, the wine that has been in my cellars for 25 years.
He pantomimed pouring and drinking, then handed another invisible cup to my brother, who pretended to drink again.
To your health.
And to yours.
The barber mimed gulping down the contents, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand.
They continued this imaginary drinking for some time, my brother pretending to grow merrier and more intoxicated with each phantom cup.
The barber began to sway on his seat, his movements becoming looser.
He swayed slightly and began to speak more loosely and laugh more loudly.
The barber's laugh grew progressively louder and more uncontrolled.
The Barmecide, delighted with my brother's performance, handed him another invisible cup.
Drink. This is the finest vintage in all Baghdad.
My brother took the invisible cup and acted as if draining it.
The barber tilted his head back, throat working.
Oh, my lord, your wine is most potent.
The barber swayed dramatically from side to side, his eyes glazing over. He stood up unsteadily, wobbling.
And then, as if completely intoxicated and losing control of himself, my brother suddenly raised his arm.
The barber's arm rose slowly in the air
And dealt the Barmecide a tremendous blow to the back of his neck.
The barber brought his hand down in a swift chopping motion, the sound of the slap sharp and loud.
The sound of the slap echoed through the chamber. The Barmecide staggered from the force of it.
The barber jerked to the side as if struck.
What is this? Why do you strike me, you scoundrel?
Oh, my lord, I am but your slave. You have shown me such great kindness, admitting me to your home and feeding me such delicious food. And then you gave me wine to drink, such potent, aged wine. I am not accustomed to such strong spirits, and I fear I have become drunk and unruly. You are too noble and too generous not to forgive your slave for what the drink has made him do.
The barber swayed back and forth, speaking with a thick tongue, and gestured expansively at the imaginary feast.
At this, the Barmecide threw back his head and laughed.
The barber threw his own head back.
Such a laugh as shook the walls. He laughed until tears ran down his cheeks.
The barber laughed heartily, wiping imaginary tears from his eyes.
Long have I made mock of men, and I have played this jest on countless visitors. But never, never have I encountered anyone with the patience, the wit, and the good humor to enter fully into my sport as you have done. For this, I forgive you your blow. Indeed, more than forgive you, you shall be my boon companion.
He clapped his hands.
The barber clapped loudly.
And real servants appeared.
Lay the table. Bring food.
And they brought forth actual food. Every dish that the Barmecide had named in jest now appeared in reality.
The barber's eyes widened with wonder, and he gestured at invisible platters, appearing one by one.
There was the bread, white and fragrant, the meat pudding, rich with fat, the marinated stew with its tender fowl, the chicken stuffed with pistachios, fish and sweets and conserves and all manner of delicacies. They set it all before my brother and the Barmecide, and the two men ate together until they were fully satisfied.
The barber rubbed his belly with satisfaction.
After this, they retired to the drinking chamber, where beautiful slave girls, lovely as moons, sang songs and played instruments. They drank real wine and made merry until the night was far advanced. The Barmecide treated my brother as a true friend and brother. he bestowed upon him a robe of honor and kept him close. From that day forward, my brother lived in the Barmecide's household as a favored companion, and they remained the best of friends. This happy arrangement continued for 20 years.
The barber held up 10 fingers twice, counting.
My brother wanted for nothing. He ate the finest foods, wore the finest clothes, and enjoyed every comfort.
The barber's expression darkened suddenly.
But then the political winds shifted, as they do.
He made a sweeping gesture, like wind changing direction.
The Barmecide fell from favor with the Sultan and died. Immediately the state seized all his property, his estates, his wealth, everything.
His hands grabbed at the air greedily.
My brother found himself on the street with nothing.
He spread his empty hands wide.
He fled from Baghdad, not knowing which way to turn. Traveling between two cities, he was set upon by desert raiders, Bedouin bandits who prowl the wastes between towns.
Give us your gold.
The barber's voice turned harsh and threatening, then shifted to pleading.
By Allah, I have no gold. I have nothing at all.
He held up his empty hands pleadingly.
The Bedouin leader, enraged at finding no plunder, drew a broad knife, the kind used for slaughtering camels, so sharp it could sever a camel's thick neck in one stroke.
The barber mimed drawing a massive blade.
And cut off both my brother's lips in his fury.
He made a swift slashing motion near his own mouth, wincing.
But worse was to come. The bandit chief had a wife, and when he was away from camp on raids, this woman made improper advances toward my brother. At first he resisted her, but she was persistent. One day, in a moment of weakness, she sat upon his lap, and at that very instant, her husband returned unexpectedly. Seeing them thus, the Bedouin flew into a rage.
You dare to dishonor me with my own wife?
He drew his knife again and, in his fury, cut off my brother's manhood. Then he bound my brother on a camel's back and left him to die on a desolate mountain. By Allah's mercy, some travelers eventually found him. They recognized him, gave him food and water, and brought him to me.
The barber pressed a hand to his heart with noble compassion.
I took him into my house, tended his wounds, and made him an allowance for his food and drink. He has dwelt with me ever since.
He spread his arms, as if embracing his unfortunate brother.
And so, O Commander of the Faithful, these are the histories of all 6 of my brothers.
The barber held up 6 fingers and counted them off one by one.
I have told their tales so that you might understand I am not as they are. I supported all of them through their follies and misfortunes, taking them in when they had nowhere else to go.
He tapped his chest proudly.
And unlike them, unlike any of them, I am known throughout Baghdad as the silent man, as Samit, for I speak only when necessary and never waste words with idle chatter.
The barber folded his arms with a self-satisfied nod, completely unaware of the irony. By now, several hours had passed, and the barber was still talking. The entire court was struggling not to laugh aloud at his complete obliviousness to his own verbosity. As the court's laughter subsided, the barber suddenly paused mid-gesture, glancing at the hunchback's body lying nearby.
But wait! With your permission, O king, I would examine the body of this hunchback, for something strikes me as curious.
The Sultan gestured his consent, and the barber knelt beside the corpse. He took the hunchback's head in his lap, looked at his face carefully, and suddenly burst out laughing.
By Allah! I swear by your beneficence that there is still life in this man.
The entire court gasped in astonishment as the barber pulled out his barber's kit from his waist belt. He took out a pot of ointment and rubbed it on the hunchback's neck and throat. Then he produced a pair of iron tweezers and, inserting them carefully into the hunchback's throat, drew out the piece of fish with its bones still attached. When it came forth, it was soaked in blood. Immediately, the hunchback sneezed a tremendous sneeze and sat up as if nothing had happened. He passed his hand over his face and cried out,
I testify that there is no God but God, and I testify that Muhammad is the apostle of God.
At this sight, everyone present marveled greatly. The Sultan laughed until he nearly fainted, as did all the others in the court.
By Allah, this is the most marvelous thing I have ever witnessed. Did you ever in all your lives see a man die and be brought back to life? Verily, had Allah not vouchsafed him this barber, the hunchback would have been a dead man.
The Sultan then bestowed costly robes of honor upon the Jewish doctor, the Christian broker, and the reeve, and bade them depart in all esteem. He gave the tailor a sumptuous robe, and appointed him as his own personal tailor, with generous pay. He made peace between the tailor and the hunchback, giving the entertainer also a splendid suit and a handsome stipend. As for the barber, the Sultan was so impressed by his entertaining tales and his life-saving skill that he gave him a rich gift and a robe of honor, settled upon him a handsome salary, and made him barber surgeon of state and one of his companions. And so they all lived together in perfect harmony and contentment, until there came to them the destroyer of all delights and the sunderer of all societies. Yet their story remained, told and retold through the ages. Though no one in the palace ever called the barber silent again,